Iran and world powers reach a historic nuclear agreement. But not everyone is happy with the deal. We'll have details. Could these patches replace injections for diabetics? And the Force Awakens behind the scenes at Comic-Con. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Lenore Moudou. This is Africa 54. Vincent Makori is off today. We begin in Vienna, where after 2 years of negotiations, Iran and 6 world powers have struck a landmark nuclear deal aimed at preventing Iran from developing nuclear weapons in exchange for lifting international sanctions that have crippled the Iranian economy and, in many ways, isolated the nation. VOA's Heather Murdoch is in Vienna and has our report.
From Iran, the United States, China, Russia, Germany, France, Britain, and the European Union announced Tuesday that after years of talks, they finally had a deal. Officials called it the good deal that all sides have been seeking.
Our quarrel has never been with the Iranian people. And we realize how deeply the nuclear-related sanctions have affected the lives of Iranians. Thanks to the agreement reached today, that will begin to change. In return for the dramatic changes that Iran has accepted for its nuclear program,
Kerry says without the deal, Iran was just a few months away from having enough nuclear material to build 10 bombs. But under the agreement, he says, it will be a decade before Iran will have enough material to build 1 bomb within a year. Iran insists its nuclear program always has been and always will be peaceful.
Iran reaffirms that under no circumstances will Iran ever seek, develop, or acquire any nuclear weapons.
But world leaders still fear rising tensions in the Middle East and fear that mistrust between Iran and rivals like Saudi Arabia and Israel could lead to a military conflict if Iran builds a nuclear arsenal.
Put simply, no deal means a greater chance of more war in the Middle East. Moreover, we give nothing up by testing whether or not this problem can be solved peacefully.
Critics in both the U.S. and Iran say the deal will empower the other side. Diplomats now face the task of selling the deal at home. Secretary of State Kerry calls some suggested alternatives to the deal, such as piling on sanctions against Iran until Tehran capitulates to international demands regarding its nuclear program, a fantasy. Heather Murdoch, VOA News, Vienna.
As Heather Murdoch mentioned, the Middle East has jitters over the Iran deal, namely Saudi Arabia and Israel. Just a short time ago, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu expressed his displeasure over the agreement.
The capacity to produce many nuclear bombs, in fact, an entire nuclear arsenal with the means to deliver it. What a stunning, historic mistake.
And joining us now live via Skype from Vienna is VOA's Victoria Macchi. Good evening, Victoria. What are the key points of this landmark nuclear deal?
We haven't actually seen the full text yet. The EU's Federica Mogherini did say that would be released today. It's about 100 pages. The most important points that as far as we understand right now, are that this does prolong Iran's ability to develop their nuclear program, and it does also give them in return lifting of certain sanctions, not all sanctions, but enough that they were actually able to get to the table and decide this very early this morning here in Vienna.
Now, the deal culminates 20 months of negotiations. Do you have some insight as to how they were able to reach it this time around?
I've only been here in Vienna since last week, but really in the last, the days I've been here, it is a lot of hard work sitting around a negotiating table. From what we can tell, this has been day and night. John Kerry meeting every permutation of these groups between Iran and the EU and Russia and China to be able to get everybody on the same page with an agreement. It really just seems like it was all of that time spent closed up in the hotel here in Vienna that was able to produce this.
Now, what is the next step after this? The UN Security Council is to ratify the deal, perhaps sometimes next week. What can you tell us?
So the UN Security Council does need to, and so do the Parliament in Tehran, and also in Washington, Congress needs to take a look at this. They have 60 days to review it. So, John Kerry and President Obama, they both said that they did not think there were going to be any problems, any hurdles. They were pretty confident in the deal that they have. But, Congress has been very, very opposed to this in Washington. It remains to be seen whether they're actually going to be able to pull it off on the home front in both locations. But the leaders of both countries seem to feel that it is a very strong possibility.
Now, there have been some mixed reactions about this agreement. Tell us what you are witnessing in Vienna about this.
Here in Vienna, really, the mixed reactions, I think we've only seen one very, very small protest here in Vienna. It was a group of American tourists who were chanting, they were here on vacation. They went to the site of the talks and they were chanting, no deal, bad deal. But other than that, it's been pretty calm here. A lot of Iranian journalists here very, very excited to see what was happening. By and large, on the international front, obviously a lot more hesitation among some parties. But here in Vienna, it really just everyone we've talked to felt like this was a hard work that paid off.
Okay, Victoria, thank you so much for joining us from Vienna. And VOA's Victoria Macchi reporting live via Skype from Vienna, Austria. And for more analysis on the nuclear deal, I'm joined by Cal Perry, host of VOA's Hashtag program and a former international correspondent. Cal, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you for having me.
So some people call it a historic deal, and Israel Prime Minister calls it a historic mistake. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so that gives you a great sort of range of the opinions that we're going to hear over the next 2 months. And as Victoria sort of alluded to, now the selling begins. People have to sell this in Washington. They have to sell this in Tehran. And that's what we're seeing now. We're starting to see really bartering over this deal. There's two ways to look at this deal. It's a diplomatic deal and it's a business deal. And I think we're hearing those opinions start to come out.
So who are the big winners here, really?
Well, I think if you're a European country and you're looking to do business with Iran, you're a big winner. If you're Israel and you're scared about what they call the Iranian tentacles, specifically Hezbollah, Hamas, then you could classify yourself as a loser. I think one of the big winners here is not only American businesses, but the Iranian people who've lived under these sanctions now for 3 decades. For somebody like me, 35 years since we've had any kind of relationship with Iran, the United States. I think people are intrigued by that. People want to know what's next. Are we going to see a wider opening like we've seen between the U.S. and Cuba? I think that's a big question. Big question indeed.
Now, President Obama said that this deal is basically not built on trust, but built on verification. What does this mean?
Right, so he's hearkening back to John F. Kennedy's talk about the Cuban Missile Crisis and dealing with Russia and trust but verify. And he's playing off of that language. For this president, this could be a legacy. And that can cut both ways. If the deal falls apart in the next month or two, which could still happen, or if he's not able to push it through Congress, that could reflect negatively on his legacy. But if this deal sticks, this is his legacy. He can hang his hat on this foreign policy victory. So I think he's hedging his bets a little bit, but he's also putting out there that this is, in his mind, a historic deal.
So give us some perspective on how we move from signing this agreement to implementing it. What will it take, or what does it entail?
So now all eyes are going to turn first to the UN Security Council. They'll pass this. That's going to be kind of a rubber stamp. Okay. Then the U.S. Congress. That's a big question. And then the IAEA. I think when the rubber meets the road here, to use an American saying, it's going to be about inspections. Will the IAEA be able to freely go into Iran and inspect facilities that it wants to with little or no warning? There's a 15-day waiting period written into the agreement in case this comes up, in case there's a difficulty. That'll be the first test when the IAEA says we want to visit this site, whether or not the Iranian government lets them in.
Now, let's talk quickly about what it means for Iran. How soon will the sanctions be lifted? What will it take? What type of commitment from the country?
So the American sanctions are going to have to wait for the U.S. Congress. But when the UN Security Council votes on this next week, we could see some European countries starting to lift their sanctions. And make no mistake about it, there are European countries that are desperate to do business in Iran. It's a whole new market. It's a market that's just going to open up. There are countries around the world. So I think we're going to start to see business taking traction in places like Tehran, places like Isfahan, and then in the months to come, we could see U.S. sanctions finally being lifted.
So quickly, what next?
So we're going to have to wait and see what the U.S. Congress does. And keep in mind, it's presidential election season here in the U.S., so it might not be very pretty, but it'll be politics 101.
Well, we'll be keeping an eye on it. Thank you so much, Cal. And that was Cal Perry, a host of VOA's hashtag program and a former international correspondent. A Liberian woman has died Tuesday of Ebola in a hospital in Monrovia shortly after being admitted, becoming the 6th confirmed case of the virus since it resurfaced last month after a 7-week lull, according to a senior medical official. The victim from Montserrado County, which contains Monrovia, is thought to be linked to the other 5 cases from neighboring Margibi County, where the disease reappeared. Her detection raised fears that the infection may be spreading in a new area of the country. Liberia was declared Ebola-free on May 9th, but reported a new case nearly 2 months later. And there were 5.4 million cyber attacks recorded last year in Kenya, more than double from the previous year. Most of those attacks involved financial fraud or targeted critical information infrastructure. As Leni Ruvaga tells us, there's one approach that's being taken to deal with the vulnerability of Kenya's information technology infrastructure.
22-year-old Felix Ngugi listens attentively as he is taken through the paces of an IT penetration testing class. The 2-year course includes hacking and anti-hacking proficiency. Students pay $10 a year to cover the cost of software and access to servers. For Ngugi and others here, this is a small price for the invaluable knowledge and experience offered by the course.
Why we are learning this is to be able to secure the people who are innocently being attacked by people who know computers, and to protect their data and information from getting out to the open.
Kenya is ranked as one of the countries most prone to cyber threats. The African Union created the AU Convention on Cybersecurity and Data Protection to tackle cybercrime, but it has not been ratified by a single African country.
One of the challenges that came up is that the member states were not consulted on these issues. So you'll find countries like Kenya, the body like the human rights organizations and some of the universities, they opposed that convention based on those facts that it could actually hamper the issues of human rights.
Cybercrime is estimated to cost the global economy more than $500 billion a year. Leni Ruvaga for VOA News, Nairobi, Kenya.
An UN manned U.S. space probe has become the first to explore the distant dwarf planet of Pluto. Researchers, staff, and visitors to the U.S. Space Agency's Goddard Space Flight Center in Laurel, Maryland, counted down the seconds and cheered as the New Horizons space probe flew within 12,500 kilometers from Pluto, taking pictures and collecting data as it zoomed past the icy world at 50,000 kilometers an hour. The rendezvous caps a 9-year, 5 billion kilometer journey across the solar system to Pluto, which was named a dwarf planet in 2006. But it will take more than half a day before NASA ground controllers receive a signal from the probe confirming it safely reached Pluto. Scientists say information obtained by $700 million New Horizons probe as it neared the planet shows that it is slightly larger than previously thought. And we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, could the new methods for dispensing insulin replace injections? Stay with us.
This is Greenbeat for a healthier planet.
In the search for greener energy, enterprising researchers have come up with some creative alternatives to fossil fuels. Cow manure, for one.
We have turned 75 tons of cow dung into fuel that can be used in 2 blast furnaces for around 6 hours.
That's Byung-Chul Kim, head of research and development at South Korea's Hyundai Steel, where the manure is used as an auxiliary to coal in steel production. In the Czech Republic, leftover sludge from leather production provides the means for a new biodiesel. Professor Karol Kolomaznik leads the research team at Tomas Bata University.
The principle is to remove glycerin from the fat, replace the glycerin by the simple methyl alcohol, and then proceed to separate glycerin from diesel.
According to the researchers, the technology could be used to produce fuel from any type of plant or animal fat. I'm VOA's Rebecca Ward. for Greenbeat.
Now, when Greek and other European leaders came to the 17th hour of the all-night talks that culminated in an agreement Monday, their immediate concerns were economic. But experts say there were also serious strategic issues driving them toward the accord. VOA's Al Persin reports from London.
The leaders avoided the unprecedented removal of a country from the common euro currency and possibly the European Union, a result experts say would have had broader implications.
That will mean that the European Union, not only is it not an optimal currency union, something that economists have already stressed, but it's also a very profoundly dysfunctional political project.
The accord will cause more hardship in Greece, but experts say an exit from the euro would have been worse, not only for the Greek people and Europe, but also in geopolitical terms if Greece fell into economic depression and social unrest.
What will happen within Greece and also its geostrategic orientation if there is a catastrophic event of dramatic proportions that Brexit might be.
Already, the new Greek prime minister has made conciliatory moves toward Russia, and the Russian president reportedly tried to convince him to veto the renewal of European Union sanctions imposed on Russia for its involvement in Ukraine. The new Greek defense minister participated in a Moscow conference with his counterparts from Iran and North Korea.
It is absolutely causing alarm bells in Europe, but it's more, I think, the symbolic nature rather than any further sort of strategic partnership for now.
But analysts like Sarah Lane, who spoke via Skype, point out that while financial markets welcome the difficult deal with the EU and it can have a positive long-term impact, Greece can't rely on Russia for much help as it struggles with its own economic problems. And they say it would take a lot of upheaval for Greeks to look to the east for their future rather than the west.
Russia might be a profitable commercial partner, but it's not the model that Greece should follow.
And experts say that broader concern led key non-Eurozone Western powers like the United States and Britain to push for a settlement and avoid the possibility that a financial dispute could lead to a geopolitical shift. Al Pessin, VOA News, London.
Let's continue our business report and go to New York, where Africa 54 business correspondent Alexis Christoforos is standing by. Hello, Alexis.
Hello, Lenore.
First off, before we talk about Greece, let me ask you about today's story we covered earlier, the Iran nuclear deal. How are oil markets reacting to this?
Well, oil prices started out lower, but they've since stabilized. Traders are really trying to wrap their heads around this landmark deal between Iran and world powers. Crude oil was trading below $51 a barrel a little bit ago, but has since bounced back to above $52 a barrel. Just how oil prices react in the near term depends on how successfully Iran can raise production and sell the oil in the face of competition. Analysts say the expected rise in global supply has already been priced into the market over the recent weeks. And as we discussed, under the deal, sanctions imposed against Iran would be lifted in exchange for curbs on Iran's nuclear program. We could start seeing about 1 million barrels of Iranian oil hit an already oversupplied market in the matter of months. And of course, this deal could also potentially give global companies such as technology and oil firms, even financial service firms, a foothold in the lucrative Iranian market. Lenore?
And quickly, how are U.S. markets reacting?
Well, U.S. investors are digesting disappointing June retail sales numbers today. On the bright side, J.P. Morgan Chase is reporting better than expected earnings, and Micron Technology stock was up about 10% on unconfirmed reports that a Chinese tech conglomerate is preparing a $23 billion takeover bid for the U.S.-based computer chip maker.
And what about Greece? What can you tell us in terms of update?
Well, national parliaments in parts of Europe will be voting on a new austerity package for Greece on Wednesday in exchange for its third bailout in 5 years. Meantime, it looks like Greece is looking to its tourists to help pay off its debts. The Greek government is expected to impose harsh new tax hikes on food, hotels, theater, even water, and those taxes are expected to get passed along to consumers.
Now, Alexis, we hear that Starbucks is coming to sub-Saharan Africa.
That's right. Some Africans will soon be able to order a cup of Starbucks coffee. The Johannesburg-based franchisor Taste Holdings has been given the exclusive rights to develop Starbucks outlets in South Africa. Those stores are set to open in the first half of next year. Taste has the license to operate the shops for 25 years, plus rights to open in some other African countries. That news sent shares of Taste Holdings soaring 20% to a record high. And this deal means that Starbucks can now sell coffee for the first time in some of the same places where it sources it. Starbucks currently sources its coffee from 9 African countries, including Ethiopia, Rwanda, and Kenya. Lenore?
Well, interesting developments there. Alexis, thank you so much for joining us. And Africa 54, Alexis Christophorus reporting live from New York. And we begin today's health report with a measles epidemic that is sweeping through northwestern Cameroon. Reports say more than 300 children have been infected and several have died in just a week. Health authorities say the epidemic got its start because people were refusing to vaccinate their children. They say teams have been deployed to all the affected areas to make sure all children are vaccinated. Measles is caused by a virus that is spread through the air by breathing, coughing, or sneezing. The measles virus is highly contagious. And a joint project by 2 U.S. schools, North Carolina State University and the University of North Carolina, aims to replace insulin injections with an insulin patch. At a lab at North Carolina State University, Dr. Zengu is on a mission to stop diabetes. And on this mission, he and his team of researchers believe they are on the way to a major breakthrough, replacing insulin injection shots.
Basically, we developed this kind of so-called smart insulin patch, and which can sense the blood sugar level and release the insulin at the right time only once the blood sugar level goes up, and the insulin can be quickly released from the patch. And meanwhile, once the blood sugar level goes down to a normal range, and then less insulin released or just inhibited. And basically, this kind of smart insulin patch is not only smart, and it's also painless. The release.
This insulin patch, colored to show the insulin once inside the mice, is smaller than a pinky fingernail. A closer look shows its microneedles, each packed with insulin and special enzymes designed to identify when blood sugar levels are low.
We are trying to mimic the function of the beta cells or the vesicles inside the beta cells, and they can disrupt only once the blood sugar level goes up and release the insulin quickly.
Dr. Gu says they've been able to make the patch last for several hours. They hope to make it last several days, and once they do, they'll be closer to reaching their goal.
Yeah, actually, we are really proud of our technology, and we really want to translate it as soon as possible. So currently, we are working with our collaborators and testing on large animals, like a mini pig-based study. And meanwhile, if this kind of mini pig study successfully demonstrated, we will move to the human being-based test immediately. Yeah.
For almost 400 million people worldwide with diabetes, the prick for insulin could become a thing of the past. And it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, a sneak peek at exclusive behind-the-scenes footage of The Force Awakens. We'll be right back.
Tentativo di colpire questa relazione non riuscirà, continueremo a lavorare.
To give up war. Climate finance is growing too, enabling the
economic and social development, but they should.
A agi conformément à sa mission principale de protéger le
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. Comic-Con goes behind the scenes of the new Star Wars movie. The Force Awakens team was out in full force at this year's massive comic book and fantasy convention in San Diego. And this 3.5-minute reel of exclusive footage from the set not only won the event without firing a shot, the clip also went wildly viral on social media. Star Wars The Force Awakens hits theaters on December 18th. This year's Comic-Con was heaven on earth for Star Wars fans. The beloved sci-fi franchise had a major presence in the massive showroom with a main mall of memorabilia booths dedicated to its characters. More than 130,000 fans attended the San Diego Convention Center for autograph signings, TV and film presentations, toy shopping, costume contests, and other artistic engagements inspired by comic books and superheroes. Other anticipated properties at the convention included The Walking Dead, Game of Thrones, Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, and The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2. And in other blockbuster news, fans in movie-mad India thronged cinema halls on the first day of the release of Bahubali as the country's most expensive film ever played simultaneously on 3,500 screens. The $39 million film generated so much interest, fans stood for hours in harsh weather to lay their hands on the priced tickets. Some cinema halls in southern India reported kilometer-long lines of fans eager to buy tickets for the thriller, while some theaters reported that their websites crashed, overloaded by the rush of the online bookings. And that is what is trending today. Lino, back to you.
Thank you, Esther. Well, that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 300 and 600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching, and good night from Washington.
Real talk, real issues. The Real Africa. It's time to get the scoop. Monday through Friday on VOA. Find your time zone and get the scoop.
We are able to touch on things that are important to people on an everyday basis.
Hello and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54.
In a lively half hour, news, sports, health, lifestyle information, comments from our viewers. Africa 54, the best for Africa, about Africa. Join us only on VOA.